Hello and welcome Inside the Training Room. Inside the Training Room is brought to you by Sarasota Sports Medicine in association with the Professional Baseball Chiropractic Society and hosted by me, Dr. Ken Kaufman. Inside the Training Room grants you exclusive VIP access into the training rooms of professional sports. With this behind-the-scenes access, you'll discover the latest elite-level techniques, skill sets, and groundbreaking knowledge used by top-level physicians and trainers in professional sports and that keep their athletes in the game. Inside the training room today, we have Joe LeHotay with Pulse PEMF. And Joe, thank you for coming inside the training room.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah,
awesome.
Love to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Fresh off the plane from Atlanta.
Yeah, had a few delays this morning, but yeah.
You still made it on time.
Orlando.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're all good. Only a few minutes late, so
awesome.
Love to be here.
Awesome, yeah. So, very good. Joe, I was reading in your bio when I was prepping for the show, is that you are the cellular exercise instructor for Pulse PEMF.
Yeah.
and to ask you, so I'm going to ask you, what is a cellular exercise instructor? I can't say
I don't know
fast.
if I'm the only one, but
Okay.
I'm the only one who thought of that. To put that on my profile, but a little bit of a snarky, just sort of catchy title there. PEMF can be thought of as cellular exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to just put a tagline of cellular exercise instructor, I thought that might be catchy and just bring questions, to bear.
Gotcha.
And it's a good conversation starter. So obviously, if you're starting with it as the first question,
Yeah.
it worked.
It worked, exactly. Yeah. So we met a while back, and I've been in practice for 30 years, and use things like laser therapy and things like that. And the more I read into PEMF therapy, and the more I hear about it, the more intrigued I am. Especially with the type of practice that I have. So why don't you please tell me, what is PEMF in general?
Yeah, so the acronym is Pulsed Electromagnetic Fields. And so basically it's a technology or modality that infuses bulk energy into the body, either systemically or focally into a specific area of issue. And it's just meant to infuse energy to encourage the body's own healing process, encourage, support, enhance, energize that healing process. And it can really be, looking at anything the body is trying to resolve on its own, which all requires energy. And we don't always have enough energy in the cells. Remember, cellular exercise, right? Cellular energizing, to pull off healing and resolution of issues maybe as thoroughly or as quickly as maybe when we were younger, or, just as quickly as we might expect, let's put it that way. And so when we infuse this energy into the body, it helps that process along. So PEMF doesn't treat or prevent or cure anything. It's not a medical device. It's not meant to cure those things and do it at that level. It's meant to encourage the body's own capabilities of resolving, healing, and adapting, which is really all the body does. It just doesn't always have enough energy to pull it off.
So would you say that PEMF therapy upregulates the energy that's available for regular body functions and body healing?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. It just upregulates, enables more energy production in the body. So whether you're talking about just in general terms, or if you're getting down to the cellular level where you're charging mitochondria and creating more ATP, which most people are familiar with those terms, and it's just a way of saying giving the body more ability to create more energy to support all of its functions.
Right. Now, in my practice, I've been utilizing photobiomodulation and class 4 laser therapy for almost a decade, probably. But the drawback of that is the scatter of the light and getting a dosage of light deep enough into the tissues to really have an effect. So, for example, like an osteoarthritic hip or something like that nature, seems to me that you don't have that limitation. That the PEMF therapy is not going to get dissipated like laser therapy would.
Yeah, I mean, great point. And that's a drawback of PBM, some of those others, just the irradiance and the penetration through the body. With PEMF, you have to, intensity is going to get you to the point where you're getting all the way into those bigger joints and bigger groups, bigger people, too, if you will. And a lot of athletes are larger size people, frankly. And so even in the PEMF realm, you have a spectrum of products that will provide more power, more intensity, more penetration into those key areas. The one that we deal with is Pulse, of course, which happens to reside more on the higher intensity side of the PEMF spectrum. Okay. So when you're talking about trying to solve that particular problem, that's a really good answer for that is something like Pulse, where it's giving you that power, that voltage, that intensity, that magnetic field strength, if you will, that will penetrate all the way through. And then if you can also create some kind of what we call it at Pulse, a push-pull effect, where now you're not only applying the energy to one side of the body, but you're also pulling it through from the other side.
Now, is that a distinction between Pulse PEMF and regular PEMF?
There are a few devices that will provide something along those lines. It's a big differentiator for Pulse, though, one that we talk about all the time. We literally have accessories that are dual, that you can place on the back or front of a joint or laterally to get all the way through that joint with the same amount of intensity. Because just like the light, it dissipates as it's going through. Right. So if you want that constant strength, that constant power, if you will, you want to be pulling it from the other side as well.
Okay, gotcha. Now, we were talking before we even started about the use of PEMF in history, and it was first kind of thought about in therapeutics. I read the 1970s, but you said no, it goes back to the turn of the century that it was being utilized. And you shared some insight on that. It was really interesting, how that got sidetracked. And because of the medical model of treating disease, not correcting cause. Go into about that a little bit, because that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we all see examples of that in the wellness business, whether it be chiropractic or functional medicine or integrative health or naturopathy. These sort of more holistic approaches to treating and supporting people, essentially. And I think as sort of medicine and the treatment of disease and the treatment of injury and things like that sort of took a different route in the early part of the 1900s, you started seeing more and more symptom treatment and less holistic approach to root cause, detection and treatment along those lines. And so that's just the point I was making earlier, where, devices and approaches and practices that may have been used even prior to, sort of that side road being taken to where we are mostly today in medicine, other practices were utilized. And, now when someone looks at PEMF, even though it's been around for 100 years, in use on animals and humans, frankly, animals too, a lot of people consider it a new thing.
It's a new deal.
And it's really not new. It's decades and decades and decades old.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring up, because, in Sarasota, we have the Sarasota Polo Club, and polo is a big deal. We go to polo all the time, and I know those horses are treated very well with things like laser, and, I'm sure they're doing Pulse PEMF or PMF work as well.
Sure.
So, and I guess I'm not really clear yet, what is the distinction between regular PEMF and Pulse PEMF? I have a thought that, Pulse is a little more high intensity. It's more on the higher intensity scale or spectrum.
Yeah, one really easy way to think about it is in intensity and power, like we had alluded to earlier. But there is basically a very wide spectrum of products that are all referred to as PEMF. And so it can be quite confusing. And if you were to pull up my Substack newsletter that I write, you'll find things that try to guide consumers through, whether they're professional practitioners of some sort or even private users at home. Half my clients are private as well. And you're navigating this market, it can be quite confusing.
Right.
So I've written some pieces on this, but essentially the spectrum ranges in cost, power, intensity, and mechanism is how I would really classify it. And so as you go up through the cost curve from the hundreds of dollars range into the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 range and up, you're increasing your intensity and you're increasing the power of the units, and you're also going and moving on the lower cost side from something I call a resonant frequency type of PEMF to a what I would call an impulse PEMF as you get to the more higher power expensive units like Pulse, for example, and others. Now, I'm not really saying that there's anything wrong with using either one of those for different applications, just to understand the differences and why the cost varies and why, maybe the results might be different using one over the other. So on the resonant frequency side, you're generating a frequency, a specific frequency in some cases, or it could be a set of maybe a choice of 3 or 4 or 5, depending on the device, where you're applying this waveform to the body to resonate with either the ability to relax the body or re-energize the body, or to specifically resonate with a specific organ even.
Oh, okay.
So I'll make this up, but let's say the liver resonates at 50 hertz. You set the machine to 50 hertz, and now you're able to harmonize with the liver and resonate the same frequency the liver wants to exist with. And so there's benefit to doing that. You don't feel anything on those therapies. And so a lot of people that implement them realize after the fact that if they're running it as a business, it's not necessarily as sort of provocative as something that you would therapeutically feel as a sensation on your body, which you get as you move into the higher intensity, more impulse-based PEMF.
So from a patient perspective, you're laying there and I'm like, I'm paying $80 for this. Just
it's sort of you may have heard that same thing with lasers and PBM. It's like, is this really doing anything? And so it just it's
and
not
at least
that
with
it's
the class
not.
4, you get some heat and you can feel it.
And it's not that it's not doing anything, and it's not that there isn't science to back up these modalities, but it takes more of your time as a practitioner to educate and to sort of, I guess, convince in some ways the patient to give it enough of an opportunity to get those full benefits. Because the way I always see it, and I've been doing this almost 10 years now, and I've spoken with hundreds of practitioners, is that if you can't feel something as a patient, as an end user, unless your life is changed the first time you try it, you're probably not going to give it enough of a chance. And it's not the technology's fault. It's human nature. On the other hand, when you do feel something occurring in the first session, the results don't even have to be very dramatic. If there's any result, you now have encouragement that you can build on in your next session. And so you will be back for that second and beyond. And then I think the ones that are giving that sensation, that tactile feeling during a session are the ones that drive the business the most readily in a practice.
Well, I'm sure that with newer practitioners that are out there and maybe have a hard time kind of explaining different modalities and explaining things really effectively. I've been in practice for 30 years, so I can explain why something is working, even though you might not be able to feel it right away, but most of the time you can. So what are some things that can compromise the cellular energy of the body? Because we're talking about upregulating energy in the body and energy of specifically to the cells. What are some things that will suppress that? I got some ideas, but what are some things that can suppress?
We're sitting in a
cellular-
room right now where our cellular energy is being compromised.
Okay.
Devices, electronics, radio frequencies, blue light. So the things that you may not come to mind immediately, but technology in general. And it is such a pervasive and ubiquitous part of all of our lives every day that we are in a constant milieu of, cellular energy compromise, if you will. And that's not even to get into the food. What are the nutrients, what are the components of our food these days?
Right.
What's in our soil these days? What's in our water these days? What are we ingesting from a nutritional, just a physical, putting stuff in our mouth type of thing. And then emotional stress, lifestyle stressors, travel. we just got here this morning.
Right.
Relationships, work, debt, everything that we are all involved with every single day, pressure in our jobs. Those things all tend to suppress the energy in our cells. And so as society, quote unquote, evolves and gets busier and gets more convenient and gets more travel related and gets more, time and debt related and performance related, and all these things add up, it becomes more important to, from time to time or on a consistent basis, give yourself some exogenous energy.
Right.
And, it used to be that if 100 years ago you were a farmer and you worked all day long in the sun and you grew your own food and you drank your own milk and you had great clean water and you went to sleep when the sun went down and you got up when the sun came up or just before, if you're a farmer, you were good in general.
Right.
But 100, I don't know, roughly that long ago, when things started to sort of evolve in society and become more convenient and become more industrial and all of that, it became a situation where, our bodies are just not necessarily used to this environment that we're in. Right. And so it becomes more important every day.
Yeah. The whole evolution of the human species, and all of a sudden, a relatively blip of time,
100 years
all
ago.
of a sudden now, it's tough to be able to adapt to something like that. So I imagine that from a practical standpoint, now I understand that, all those other things can suppress cellular energy. What about things like exercise or over-exercise? So, specifically on an athlete or an active individual that likes to play pickleball or likes to get out and play golf 3-4 days a week or what have you. How does that kind of factor into suppressing cellular function?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're overworking muscles and you're getting, DOMS, or you're just wearing yourself out, depending on your age, I guess, that has a big factor in it, generally speaking. People that are younger can generally have more endurance and more muscle endurance and then people that are used to it and people that train every day and are elite athletes may not wear out as easy as somebody else,
well,
of course.
Plus they're 25 years old, too.
Yeah, and it's their age, right? But yeah, I mean, high-performing athletes, especially, you want to be replacing, and not only replacing it, and it's a good point too that you bring up, and it sort of triggers this thought process of, we're not necessarily with something like PEMF, a lot of times people consider it as a fix for something versus a prevention for something. And so especially with high level athletes, there's a mindset that, well, if they're not injured, that means they're healthy. It's not necessarily the case.
No.
They may have an injury coming around the corner that you don't see for whatever reason because they are compromised in some way.
Right.
And it gets maybe a little bit under the covers of what we just alluded to in terms of lifestyle and stress and travel and performance and pressure and all those things. All those things apply to a high-level athlete as well.
Absolutely.
And so just because they don't have a bad ankle right now
Yeah, right.
doesn't mean they're healthy, and
Right.
at that even their ankles are healthy.
Well, I mean,
necessarily.
and that brings up the point that, which, I try to explain to my, especially my younger patients that are really driven. They're trying to make the team, or they're trying to, get to varsity, or they're trying to get their college scholarship, is their intense focus on training. And oftentimes I have to say, look, you need to do two things that you probably have never really considered. Number one, you need to consume the nutrition that an athlete would consume, not, fast food and junk food, because, let's face it, most teenagers, they like they like their junk food. But then also being able to take time and invest in recovery. And if that has to do with, saunas, stretching, rest, just taking some time off to allow their body to heal. So my, based on this conversation, I think that Pulse PEMF would be an integral part to be able to help somebody upregulate their recovery, so that that bad ankle or that bad shoulder can recover from the those intense sessions and competition and that type of thing better. It's just something that's going to add to their recovery ability.
Yep. Definitely, 100%. And, it takes me back to a conversation I had with a collegiate women's basketball player where they were on our technology, giving it a try. And she basically looked at me and said, "Why do I need to be on this?" And, I was kind of on the spot.
Yeah.
And I had not thought of what was about to come out of my mouth, but I went through a 5-step questioning process with her. And I said, "Why are you here? Why do you play this sport?" "Well, I want to be the best. I want to win. I want to help my team win." "Okay, so you want to perform at the highest level you possibly can, right?" "Yes." The answer was yes. "In order to perform at your highest level, what's the most important thing you have to do?" She says, "I have to train. I have to train at my highest level." "Okay, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. So in order to train at your highest level, what do you have to do?" "Well, I have to recover really well." And that's what the coach is telling us these days. And I'm like, okay, good coach.
Yeah,
they're training you on how to build those blocks towards training and performance, right? Did you know that in order to recover well, you need to rest really well? "Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I need to get good sleep and stuff, make sure my body's resting and everything." And I said, "Do you know what your body needs the most in order to rest most efficiently?" "No, I don't know that." And I said, "You're laying on it.
Yeah.
You need energy.
Energy, yeah.
Energy in the body lets you rest better and more efficiently. Resting lets you recover better and more optimally. Recovering helps you train better and more effectively. Training better helps you to perform at a higher level, and that brings success."
Yeah.
The thing about it is that it's not only for the collegiate athlete
or
the athlete at all. It's for me. It's for you. It's for these guys. It's for doctors. It's for teachers. It's for students. It's for farmers. It's for in every walk of life, whether physical or mental, you need to perform in order to succeed.
Sure.
And you need to do all those 5 steps in order to get back to that success level. And so, it's a sort of a 5-finger explanation to a simple question. Hey, why am I on this?
Yeah, exactly.
But she looked at me and said,
Yeah, it makes sense.
"I'm staying on this."
Yeah. So, and that kind of brings me up to one of the things that I saw on the website was the whole concept of nourish, exercise, recharge, and hydrate. So obviously the nourishment is the nutrition that you're putting down your gullet, making sure that it's, healthy, low in processed foods, low in chemicals, that type of thing. Exercise, which is, exercise and training and fitness and that type of thing. Recharge is where the PEMF comes in. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and that kind of cycle of, because it's a there's really no end to it if you're going to continue to be involved in life and exercise and things like that. You still have to eat, you still have to hydrate. So PEMF kind of falls into that whole cycle.
Yeah, and I would say PEMF probably serves 2 purposes in that 4 sort of bullet point thing, the other being nutrition itself. And so I think, there's a misconception that nutrition is only things that we put in our mouth, but it can also be light. It can also be electrons and grounding. And so you're nourishing the body with what it needs, essentially. And so that's not always food or something to drink. And so I think PEMF might fall into a couple categories there, but definitely on the recharge side, and for all the reasons we talked about earlier, it just makes sense since there are so many things suppressing the energy in our body these days, from the way that maybe we obtained that energy 100, 150 years ago and prior, there's a lot of reasons why plugging yourself in and charging yourself up,
right,
and sort of charging your cellular batteries. Essentially, every cell in your body, whether it's 30 trillion or 100 trillion, depending on who you're reading these days, there's trillions and trillions of cells. Most people agree on the fact, even they can't agree on the number, they agree on the fact that they are all capacitors, batteries. And so your body literally is meant to take in a charge and hold it. And depending on certain factors, whether it be age or other environmental or lifestyle stressors like before, those levels can be suppressed, and your capacitance in your cells, your ability to hold that charge, can be reduced over time. A simple example is, our phone. When you get a brand new, how many things can your phone do, first of all?
Oh, geez.
Untold millions of things. How many can it do when the battery's dead? None.
Oh, that's a good point.
None.
Yeah.
And also, the first day you get a brand new phone, I've done this 10 or 12 times with new phones over the years, where you're talking the next day after you got it, and it's still, the battery's 80 percent. And you're like, this is the greatest phone ever. It's got the greatest battery. Well, 2 years later, it's 10 in the morning and it's already at 30%.
Yeah, right.
So what's going on with that? And so, if you sort of draw a parallel to our own bodies and the way we age, our capacitance, our ability to hold on to that charge is reduced over time. And so something like PEMF can help support that ability to hold a charge, and then charging you back up as you discharge and dissipate throughout the week, throughout the day, throughout the month, that kind of thing, depending on your needs.
Excellent. I'm going to take a little break here and talk about our sponsors. Okay. So this episode of Inside the Training Room is brought to you by, guess what? Sarasota Sports Medicine. Sarasota Sports Medicine is the premier regenerative sports medicine clinic on the west coast of Florida, obviously located in Sarasota. Sarasota Sports Medicine is revolutionizing the healthcare industry by providing an unparalleled level of service, patient satisfaction, and bringing you the latest cutting-edge sports injury treatments typically only found in professional athletic training rooms. Our dedicated staff is committed to helping our patients regain the ability to pursue their passion. One visit to Sarasota Sports Medicine, and you'll discover you don't have to be a pro to be treated like one. This episode is also brought to you by the Professional Baseball Chiropractic Society. The Professional Baseball Chiropractic Society is the leading organization of skilled chiropractors dedicated to delivering the highest standard of chiropractic care to professional baseball players and their staff. Our mission is to enhance the health and performance and longevity of those we serve through specialized, evidence-informed chiropractic services tailored to the demands of elite-level sports. And finally, this episode is also brought to you by Pulse PEMF. It's a world-class wellness product that enhances the body's ability to repair itself. Your journey of organic healing and well-being starts at the cellular level. Experience the new standard of integrative holistic luxury that transports you from life's challenges towards total wellness physically, mentally, and emotionally. And their products are manufactured in their facilities in Cartersville, Georgia. And for more information, you can visit pulsepemf.com, or preferably, you could go ahead and visit Joe LeHotay, on Instagram. Are you still at LeHotay.com?
At LeHotay Joe.
At LeHotay Joe on Instagram.
Yes.
So, all right, very good. So let's talk a little more clinically, because, of course, there's going to be a lot of chiropractors that are watching this. On I'm more interested in the whole regenerative side of things, because that's our practice. But for the general chiropractic physician out there, or physical therapist, or acupuncturist, or whoever might be interested in this from a clinical perspective, how does Pulse PEMF kind of integrate into in a clinical setting with a chiropractic, just your general straight up chiropractor?
Yeah, I mean, it really lends itself to whatever model your practice is based on, whatever workflow you're based on, whether we see everything from memberships to, selling standard sessions, to packages, to an adjunct with an adjustment or some other service or procedure. Maybe it's a regenerative procedure. So anything from selling one-off sessions to an upgraded or an adjunct to something else, to a package of sessions. And so it lends itself to any of those models. And when you become a Pulse client in particular, we take you through, various models and come up together with the plan that works
some sort of protocol
best for your particular office.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I have guys who, will have someone pulse for 10 or 15 minutes prior to an adjustment, and then maybe upcharge the adjustment. Maybe they do that every other adjustment. So there are different ways of handling that particular way. They could have another stream of traffic that's coming in just for the pulse, for the PEMF sessions. And so whether they're selling 5 packs, 10 packs, 20 packs, 50 packs of sessions, we go through all that with you, help you come up with pricing. It's typically, as a rule of thumb, about $1.50 to $2 a minute is what you're charging for something like Pulse. And then others will, even have it as a wellness memberships. Even some chiropractors are going now to a wellness side of the office where they're doing things like PBM, like PMF, like cryotherapy, and other different wellness modalities and recovery modalities. And they might have a membership model for that. So there's various.
Yeah, I could see, from purely from a clinical perspective. So, our protocol in our practice, if somebody's got like a torn rotator cuff and OA or osteoarthritis of the shoulder, we'll do initial class 4 laser therapy sessions on them to kind of, get some effects on the tissue, decrease some of the swelling and that type of thing, decrease some pain, and then do perhaps a stem cell injection. And then a week later, go ahead and do more laser therapy and get them into corrective exercise. But I can see in my practice a whole application where somebody would, kind of start that process with laser therapy, getting, maybe some pulse work, get the stem cell injection, and then do pulse, a week or two, for a week or two at least after the stem cell injection to help, again, upregulate as those cells are beginning to have an effect on the tissue, increasing the collagen fibers, helping to differentiate into new tissues. It's going to need energy to be able to maximize the effects of that stem cell injection.
Yeah, you're really talking about optimizing and maximizing that. And so Pulse fits into that conversation perfectly, whether you're preparing the terrain let's say, a procedure like that, or helping to generate and support and enhance and energize the entire healing process, regeneration process, to help what you've just done in your procedure just take hold and sort of be maximized throughout those next few to several weeks, if you will. Big difference between something like Pulse and something like laser. They fit together great. One happens to be active and attended, and one happens to be completely passive.
That was another question, is it's
that's a big
unattended.
thing.
You can kind of set it and set the patient on there for 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatnot.
Yeah, completely. And so they could be on that while you're doing something else, obviously. And so, as a practitioner, you always look at practicing at the top of your license and maximizing your time, every minute of the day. Basically, you have a finite amount of minutes during the day. So if you can accomplish something that is beneficial to the patient, beneficial to the revenue of the office, and do it in a way that it doesn't take your particular cycles. And maybe it just takes a staff member or even a minimal staff member as well with something like Pulse. Now you're firing on all cylinders as well as far as benefiting the patient, benefiting the practice, and doing it in a way that doesn't dilute anything else.
Right. Yeah. Because, when we're all busy and, adding in something else into, have to manage. But fortunately, I'm in a position where I got, staff that can handle all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, you triggered something else too, in that you said adding something else. When I deal with a lot of different models of businesses, not just chiropractic, but, biohacking centers and these wellness centers that are literally putting in 10, 12, 15, 20 different modalities. It's crazy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
In some cases. And they want to know where in there does Pulse fit. It's always, I have 7 services I'm offering today, and now I'm going to put Pulse in. That's going to be the eighth thing that my people have to choose from.
Right.
And what I like to say is, because of what Pulse does and what Pulse PEMF is able to do with energizing the cells, preparing the terrain, energizing the recovery after the fact. And so for as broad-based as it is, it really shouldn't be thought of as number 8 or the next service. It should be thought of as what I call service 0. It's the foundational biohack, the foundational wellness tool that makes to the example earlier, your stem cell procedure better. It makes your infrared sauna better. It makes your hyperbaric oxygen chamber better because it prepares the body to either get ready for those other therapies or to make the most of those other therapies once you've done those other therapies.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you can upregulate that energy in the body, because again, we're not trying to suppress. We're not trying to cover things up with medications. We're not injecting cortisone to shut off inflammatory reactions. We're wanting to upregulate to allow the body, because the body's innate wisdom, we want to upregulate the body's ability to heal. And you take and do something like Pulse to kind of prep, like you say, ground zero, and then you add in laser, then you add in the stem cell injection and those other things. So
yeah, I mean, I look at simple garden analogy. Think of your body as a garden, and Pulse is the fertilizer for the garden. So if you had a handful of really good vegetable seeds and you had a choice of planting them in black soil that's fertilized and tilled and it's moist and it's in the sun, it's in the proper sunlight and all of that, or you could just turn around and throw them in your driveway. Where are they going to do better? And so I think of Pulse as the fertilizer, and I think of the stem cell treatment or the HBOT or the infrared sauna or the IV therapy as seeds. And you always want your seeds to do as well or to thrive as well as they possibly can. And I believe Pulse provides that energy, to your point, to energize that entire terrain to make better use of those things. And so when people are out there literally spending the money that's being spent these days on modalities like biohacking modalities and wellness modalities, not only by professionals like yourself and your colleagues, but private individuals. Half of my clients are private. They're spending a boatload of money on all of these different things, whether it be supplementation to different ways to hydrate to different technologies. And I want people to get their best possible return on investment from all of those other things. So I want to come in as the foundational layer of that to energize the value of all of those other products or practices or what have you.
Exactly.
Hope that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. So one of the things you suggested we talk about is the PEMF market in sports medicine specifically, which of course I'm interested in because that's what I'm in.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. To our conversation earlier, PEMF in particular has been around for 100 years in general. And it's funny because a lot people don't know about it.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know.
Frankly,
pretty smart guy, but
frankly,
I didn't know.
At Pulse, I've been with Pulse for a little over 8 years now. And frankly, for 18 years, Pulse has been in existence in Georgia there. Chiropractic has been our biggest market.
Yeah.
And we probably have close to 3,000-4,000 different chiropractors using Pulse around the country. And we can still go to FCA, Parker, Mac. We could go to any of the big chiropractic shows, and half of you guys don't know what
What's
PEMF
that?
is.
Yeah.
Now, what is that really?
Right, right.
And so I take some responsibility for that.
It's not all your fault. It's not all your fault. I'm not going to throw that on you.
Well, I appreciate that. To some degree, it's our fault. But, it is an interesting point. However, now I think that it's coming out from under the carpet, under the radar. It's getting a little more view, a little more eyeballs on it. And it's interesting because what we're seeing in baseball, especially baseball, is that even though a lot of people that you would think know about PEMF don't, we are seeing somewhat of a replacement market start already.
What you said, yeah.
So we're now into maybe the second, hinging on the third generation for some teams, where they are replacing their PEMF that they've had for a number of years. Right. So whether that is going from a more low intensity device, less expensive device, to a more impulsive, more expensive device, as we talked about with the Spectrum earlier, or whether that's just brands, one brand to another, they just like one brand over another type thing. But we're starting to see now where, I'm starting to come to the realization that it looks like if you're a professional sports team and you're not employing PEMF at all yet, you're at least a generation behind.
Yeah, right. Well, I know that I've served as the team chiropractor for spring training for the Orioles. Very interesting, because the Orioles, it seems like they were never afraid to go ahead and spend money on modalities.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way. Their facility in Sarasota is pretty amazing, and then the Pirates are they're coming around. They've added in quite a few new. Because right now I serve as the team chiropractor, spring training consultant chiropractor for the Pirates, and they just upgraded their K laser to the Mac Daddy K laser, and looking at PEMF work and so forth, but. One of the things that we talked about, and I guess to your point, with people understanding what PEMF therapy is, and it kind of, like you say, coming out of the shadows, so to speak. I think a lot of it has to do, and especially with the marketplace of these holistic wellness centers and recovery centers and things of that nature, is that because of the debacle that COVID was, and the information that was out there, and a lot of times misinformation out there on the where COVID came from and how to treat it and all this type of thing. I'm glad I was right. I knew I was right. Not wearing masks and the whole vaccine thing. I was like, no, not going to happen. Right. But I think because of the amount of information that's out there now, a lot of the public is sitting back going, maybe the medical model isn't really what's in my best interest. And so at least people, in fact, I had a patient that he went through stem cell therapy because he had, I think it was his knee or something like that, severe osteoarthritis. They wanted to do a knee replacement on him. And he said 8 years ago, I would have said, okay, yeah, whatever my doctor says, I got to do. And he said because of what happened with that, and his daughters were a little more open-minded. They were like, Dad, you need to really consider this and look into that. He was like, he's like questioning everything now. Everything he thought that he knew before, he's questioning because of that. What happened. And so I think the marketplace and the public in general is at least stepping back going, that let's see if that even makes sense. And so the mind shift is now, hey, I need to start doing things like hyperbaric and some of these other modalities, getting some IV nutrition, and maybe I need to clear out some of the toxins that are in my food and stop eating fast food and get a more plant-based basis diet, that type of thing. So I think the mentality of of the public in general is questioning kind of the old dogmas of what to do, and really embracing, I don't want to say alternatives, because it's really gaining where it's not an alternative, it's more of a mainstream type of thing. And Pulse PEMF, and it may
be more traditional.
I think it's gaining more tradition, especially as the older population kind of, unfortunately, gets replaced with a more of a younger generation that's a little more focused on wellness and health and understanding that they can't, they don't want to be on meds. I don't know too many people that are like, oh yeah, I get to add another heart medication to my regimen.
Sure.
Nobody wants that. They know that they're innately, they understand that it's not correcting cause. All it's doing is, treating symptoms. Let's get back to correcting cause and figure out how do we boost the body up, upregulate. And so I think that Pulse and PEMF technology in general is being able to enjoy that.
Yeah, it plays right into that whole conversation. And yeah, to that point, since 2020 and 2021, we've had our best years at Pulse. And I would say that close to 100% of the people that I talk to are of that very similar mindset of, people are paying more attention. They're not outsourcing their health as much anymore. They're taking more ownership of it. I think it's just becoming a more decentralized model, and not relying on some central established institution to, with something as important as your health.
Right.
And, we talk about decentralized finance versus centralized finance, and between finance and health, I can't think of anything more important or more sort of integral in our everyday practical lives.
Right.
And so I'm a fan of, any conversations around just looking at what the best alternatives are versus what we're told the best alternatives are all the time.
Right, exactly.
Just think for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, think for yourself. You want things to make sense, and just think about it before you act. And I think more and more people in the public are doing that. So, Joe, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think when it comes to PEMF, people shouldn't make the mistake of not only thinking it's new, but also don't make the mistake of thinking that it's only for pain. A lot of people are drawn to PEMF for pain, just as they are a lot of different modalities, like the lasers and the other things that wellness can offer. It's usually pain or some unresolved health issue that people flock to these new ideas for, even if they're not necessarily quote unquote new.
Right.
As we said. But, don't make that mistake, and think of PEMF also, to an earlier point, as more nutrition versus analgesic. So more vitamin than aspirin. It can be a great aspirin if you have something specific, or your player is down and, they need to get moving. They need to get back in the game, or one of your patients is just dealing with something chronic or something acute specifically like that. It's great for that. Don't get me wrong. But the reason why it's great isn't because it's covering the pain like a different type of approach, like an analgesic might or an NSAID might. But it's nourishing the body's capabilities to deal and resolve that issue of pain in that particular example. And so even though it's doing something similar, it's not doing it the same way.
Right.
And with using the same tools, basically. So don't put it in the same category as one of those other things, and definitely don't pigeonhole it into it's only good for pain.
Right.
Or something that's bothering you now. Use it as a vitamin as consistently as you can for the rest of your life. Find a way to get access to a very high quality, one that's going to last forever, give you all the power that you need. I think Pulse in particular falls into all those categories for the rest of your life at the lowest total cost. And that's how I come up with a lot of private clients, frankly, is they really decide that, hey, I have a family of 3-4 kids. Yeah. We all want to get this done. We see the benefit of it. We want to use it the rest of our lives. These machines are built to last forever.
Yeah.
We gotta get one for ourselves.
Right.
And so, that's how we sort of scale that whole model, is just that way of thinking. And so I think that's a super important way for people to think of PEMF as nutrition.
Excellent. So again, Joe, thanks for coming inside the training room. For more information, of course, go to pulsepemf.com, or you can visit Joe LeHotay at Instagram at LeHotayJoy.
LeHotay Joe.
Joe.
It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, that's right. I got my glasses or not. And but you can go ahead and visit him. He's got a ton of content on Instagram and lots of videos and so forth. So until next time, thank you for being inside the training room, and we will see you again soon.